colony? Oh my God. Hey, I'm Michelle with Michelle Loves Books. Welcome back to my channel. 7 on Sundays is a Goodreads group hosted by G-Swizzel. I will leave all of the links in the description box below, with a bunch of other links I think that you will find very interesting for today's topic. So please check out those links. In the spirit of Latinx Heritage Month, today's 7 on Sunday prompt is Latinx authors. I wanted to do something a little bit different. It kind of goes with this idea that I've had floating around for a really long time. So I really wanted to highlight a few things that I found were particularly interesting about each author's career, and then mention a few books that they have written. I've not read any of these books except for maybe one that I have mentioned in this video. If I have read it, I will let you know. Otherwise, the books mentioned in this video are just ones that I personally find really interesting that I would really like to read one day. The first author that I would like to talk about is Isabel Allende, and I really hope that I pronounced most of these names correctly. She is a Chilean-American author who lives in California. She teaches literature at several US colleges, as well as journalism and creative writing. She wrote her first novel in 1982, called The House of Spirits. Since then, she has written 23 books, including Daughter of Fortune, which is the one of hers that I have. She writes in the magical realism genre with historical events. Isabel also devotes time to human rights causes and a charitable foundation that she started. She also does TED Talks, as well as has a long grocery list of awards and acknowledgements that you can check out on her website, as well as more information on her foundation. So back to her books, we have Daughter of Fortune. This is about Eliza, who is an orphan. She's raised in a British colony? Oh my God. She's raised in a British colony in Chile. She falls in love with a boy named Joaquin. I really feel like I should have Googled the correct pronunciation. I am so sorry. Anyways, so she falls in love with a boy named Joaquin. When gold is discovered in California around the 1850s, they take off together through San Francisco and Northern California. They meet all these different characters from all different walks of life. Many people are migrating out there to the West, chasing the gold. Interesting about Gold Rush is I always forget about this until it's brought up. But when I was in school in California, and I don't know, I mean, I only went to elementary school in one state, so I don't know. Kids playing cereal. Anyways, I went to school. I grew up in San Diego. I went to elementary school. And I didn't move until I was 16 in high school. At my elementary school, we did this field day thing. It was like for a week long, and it was all about the California Gold Rush. I think the units, around and about that time, we studied, you know, the covered wagons and all that stuff that go out to the West. And we did this whole thing, like each day you get to do different activities that people in the Gold Rush would have done. So it's like part of my childhood memories and lessons and things like that in my home state. Oh, there went the power. So I'm really excited about this book. The next book I would like to read by Isabel Allende is called Eva Luna. It's essentially about a poor storyteller who trades stories like currency, and she meets a bunch of different types of people. This reminds me of El Toro from House at the Edge of Night. I think that was one of my favorite things about this book, other than the actual House at the Edge of Night, is just that he was a collector of stories and he wrote them down in this little book, and I love that. Another book that she wrote is called My Invented Country, A Nostalgic Journey Through Chile. I believe that this is a really good look at what it's like to be from two different places and an immigrant. It also features this iconic house, which her mother grew up in. She grew up hearing all of these different stories about this house despite never actually visiting it. And this house is also the feature in the first book I mentioned called House of Spirits. I thought that was particularly interesting and noteworthy. Again, a common theme as the past couple months have been books that like feature or are centralized around a house. It's kind of cool. The next author that I would like to talk about is Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He's a Colombian author. He also writes short stories. He's a journalist and a screenwriter. Apparently his nickname is Gabo when he's in his country. In 1982, he received the Nobel Prize of Literature. He studied at the College of Bogota. He was also a reporter for a newspaper in Colombia, and he acted as a foreign correspondent. I cannot get certain words out today. Oh, I guess he like traveled to Rome, and then he was like a foreign correspondent for a newspaper assignment, and that job allowed him to travel to many different places. It says Paris, New York, Barcelona, and Mexico. And I thought it was really interesting, but he also studied law until he decided to drop it for journalism. I have one of his books, a very beat up copy of 100 Years of Solitude. This is a magical realism. I'm thinking it's probably one of his most popular books. I've been seeing it just around all the time. Like, something in the universe is telling me, read this book now. And I keep wanting to like go ahead and start it, even though I'm reading a bunch of other things. But I'm trying to be patient. Anyways, this book is about the Buendia family, and it's about the conflict of desire for solitude and the need for love. I seriously cannot wait to start this book. His second most popular book, I believe, is called Love in the Time of Cholera. This is like an epic romance as Florentino and Fermina, I think I'm saying that correctly, fall in love, but Fermina ends up marrying a rich doctor instead. But Florentino waits for her. He has many affairs over the next 50 years, but when the rich doctor dies, Florentino attends the funeral to profess his love for Fermina still. That just sounds just so incredibly sweet, and just like, has this whole life he never met anyone still that holds his heart the way this woman did. So I don't know, it's just like so sweet. This girl better take him back, just saying. One other book I'd like to mention by him is called The Chronicle of Death Foretold. I felt that this was particularly interesting to me for the sake of getting to know the author, because it is about a young woman who had a lover that shamed her entire family. So her brothers discuss this murder of this lover, and soon everyone is aware of the plot to murder this man. So the question is, if everybody knows, why has nobody intervened? And thus the whole community is on trial. I just personally found it particularly interesting because Marquez was first a law student. The third author I would like to talk about is Paula Ramos. I found her book while I was researching for this video, so I had to mention her. She's Mexican American Cuban heritage. She was born in Miami, Florida, which is my new home state, so of course. She herself is a journalist, a correspondent for Vice. She has done work on Telemundo and MSNBC. I did also, oh, it's raining now. I did also kind of look into, like, her dad is actually a really interesting person as well, and has really interesting resume. You can check all that out. Most of her work has to do with Latinx issues. She studied at Bernard, and I had seen this college actually pop up quite a few times. Several of the authors I was looking at, a lot of them have gone to Bernard, so I just decided I had to go ahead and look it up. I was unaware that it is a private women's college named after the 10th president. I guess it is tied into Colombia, but Colombia would not admit women to the college in like 1889, and so Bernard was kind of a retaliation. I don't know if that's the right terminology. So they opened up Bernard for women specifically, but I do think it's tied in with Colombia. Anyways, I just found that very interesting. She also received her master's at Harvard Kennedy School. Her book is called Finding Latinx: In Search of the Voices, Redefining Latino Identity. Basically, I found this book, the premise of this book, very empowering. It appears like it's a journalistic style story as she tells the stories of all these different people that she meets. And she highlights the cultural, political, and social relevance of Latin culture's growing movement. Also, just because of the kind of book that this is, the fourth author that I would like to talk about is Sandra Cisneros. She is a Mexican-American author, poet, short story writer, essayist, performer, and an artist. Very interesting activities there. I would really like to see what kind of performances and art that she does. Her work mostly focuses on the working class. She has won many awards as well as her books. She has 2 nonprofits that she founded. The Macondo Foundation, which celebrates its 25th anniversary in 2020, and the Alfredo Cisneros del Moral Foundation, which ran for 15 years. She helps high school dropouts and teaches creative writing and works with community activists. One of her most popular books is House on Mango Street, which has sold 6 million copies. It is a short story, and it was also on required reading list for middle school and high school students. It's a coming-of-age story about Esperanza growing up in Chicago and inventing who she wants to be. The other notable book that I would like to read by Sandra is a book that I have in my collection called Carmelo. It's about Celia. I'm not sure how to say her name. It's Sayala. Anyways, it's about, I think I'm saying her name right, Sayala Reyes, or she goes as Lala for short. And her family, her aunts, her uncles, parents, and siblings. I guess they said that she has 5 older brothers. They pack up in 3 cars and they drive from Chicago to Mexico City for the summer to visit her grandparents. It's said that Lala has a very shrewd observation of family life, but it seems like there's a lot of stories that she grew up with that maybe weren't told in the correct way. So during her summer, she has some conversations with this grandmother that she's heard terrible things about, and I guess she gets her story straight. In the synopsis, it says that this is a multi-generational family narrative that turns into an exploration of storytelling, lies, and life. Another one that I just cannot wait to start. I just want to start it right now. The next author that I would like to talk about is Silvia Moreno Garcia. She is a Mexican-Canadian author. I really wish I was just cuddled up under a blanket right now reading, but I really needed to film these videos today. I only have so much time on the weekends now. There really isn't a lot to her bio except for her work. Nonfictions, anthologies, works that she's edited, and novels that she's wrote, and a list of several awards that she has won. She has an MA in Science and Technology. She got her degree from University of British Columbia. If you visit her website, you can actually read her thesis if that's something that you're interested in. Wow, we are getting a lot of thunder. The genres that she likes to write in are horror, science fiction, fantasy, and historical fiction. Now, I am reading Mexican Gothic right now. I'm about 60% through. I cannot wait to talk about this book. I'm actually going to talk about it a little bit right now because it came up. At the time that I am filming this right now, this actually isn't supposed to come up for another 2 weeks, and I know I'm going to be done with that book by then. It is a horror, historical, science fiction book. I literally just got to the crux of the plot. I was thoroughly floored and surprised by where she took this book. It takes place in 1950s Mexico. Noemi is a city girl from Mexico City, and she's a bit of a flighty socialite. She's very stubborn and strong-willed character. She's somewhat forced into a wellness check on her cousin, who sent this really obscure letter, and it brought up some concerns about her well-being. So her dad sends Noemi out there to check on her. And they grew up together, they were very close. Her cousin moved to a rural town, rural? I never can say that correctly. Her cousin moved to a rural town after getting married to Virgil Doyle, an Englishman who lives at High Place, which is this kind of decrepit old mansion on top of some mines, whose family owns these like silver mines. Noemi finds it very difficult to adhere to the strict rules of the Doyle household and finds that her efforts to prove to her father that she can handle her assignment is ever more difficult to fulfill. So this book, like I said, it is so interesting. I've heard that, I don't know, I like the writing style. I think that it has a really nice pacing. Man, is it atmospheric and creepy, and like I said, I got to the crux of it, and you can hear more about this in my probably a wrap up if I don't do a video just for this book. We'll see. Certain Dark Things, which takes place, again, it takes place in Mexico City, and it's about vampires. Okay, so it's about narco vampire clan. I personally don't know exactly what narco means. My husband likes to watch this show called Narcos, which is like about drugs and stuff. I think it's about drugs and gangs. So I don't know much about it. I don't really care for drug shows and stuff like that. We'll have to see. I probably have to really give this book a chance because it really intrigues me with the vampires. There's also a book called Gods of Jade and Shadow, and I saw this briefly floating around booktube. I think a lot of people were pretty interested in it and excited for it, but then no one has talked about it. I don't know. I'm not sure if it was received very well on booktube. It's still very intriguing, and just knowing her style of writing, I am really interested in giving it a shot. It takes place in southern Mexico, and it's about this ancient Mayan spirit who gets freed, and the protagonist of this story has to help this Mayan spirit regain this throne, otherwise something bad's gonna happen. It sounds so interesting because I feel like you could get some history, highlight like some Mayan culture. The sixth author that I would like to talk about is Francisco Cantu. So he served as U.S. Border Patrol in Texas, Arizona, and Mexico for 4 years. His essays and translations are featured in a bunch of different things. There really isn't too much more bio more than that, but his book that I would really like to read is called The Line Becomes a River: Dispatches from the Border. And Sandra Cisneros writes a blurb for this book. The seventh and final author that I would like to talk about is Reinaldo Arenas. Pretty sure I'm butchering that last name. I really like his first name though. He is a Cuban man, and oh my God, like this poor man has had a really shitty run of luck. Back when he lived in Cuba most of his life, and he tried to go to college when he was living there, but he was unable to finish his college education because I guess maybe funding ran out. He's recognized for his talent in writing and given the National Union of Cuban Writers and Artists Award. He also worked as a journalist and an editor for the Cuban Book Institute and Literary Magazine. However, Cuba's communist government was opposed to his openly gay lifestyle and his writings. And I guess while he was recognized for his writings, eventually, I guess maybe, I don't know the evolution of it, maybe he started writing more provocative or something later on, because he was like recognized for his writing but then shamed for it. Anyways, so eventually he was charged with ideological deviation and he was imprisoned. He was also, it probably was stacking on the fact that he also was publishing abroad without official consent. He escaped from prison and attempted to escape Cuba by like trying to make it across the water in like a float or something, but he couldn't make it, and so they found him and put him back in prison at a place called El Horror Castle. El something. I think text prediction screwed that up. Something. He was locked up with murderers and rapists, and the only way he found to survive was writing correspondence for the other inmates. He also continued to write in prison, but he was severely punished when he was caught. He was threatened by death and forced to renounce his work. He was finally released in 1976, and then he was finally able to leave Cuba, and he came to the United States in 1980. It's really no wonder that when he got to the United States, and because it was the 80s, that he got caught up in drugs, and that's how he ultimately died. Also, he had AIDS, but he died of an overdose. I just feel so bad for this man. He like had such a bad run of luck, especially in that time. So many people hid the fact that they were gay, and he continued to be brave despite everything and live his life the way he wanted to. And I feel like that is so inspiring. So his bravery is really extraordinary. I don't know too much about his writing, but I think I would like to read the book called Before Night Falls, which is a memoir of his life. The synopsis of this book says he was a rebel fighting for Fidel Castro. It was about what his life was like in revolutionary Cuba as a homosexual and how the Castro government suppressed his writing and imprisoned him. So basically his life story, but I found that it was really interesting because in his original bio, it didn't say how he was a rebel fighter and fought for the government, the same government that condemned him. Yeah, that sucks. That is all I had for you. I know this was quite a long video. I just really wanted to talk more about the author than just the books they write. So yeah, I hope that you really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.